In this lesson, we are going to take a look at the wrapper material and how we can use it to compose a scene with this bike using the photograph that we have here as a background. We already have a basic model of the ground and a wall model for where the bike is propped. To start, we need to explore how to match the lighting with the photograph. Note that the bike will also need to cast a shadow on that wall behind it. To achieve this look, we are going to use image-based lighting with a dome light and an HDRI. Let's first create a dome light and then choose an HDR image from the Assets folder. I will select the red wall 4K image and click Open. This image was taken at the same location, so it will reproduce the lighting conditions specific for that time of day. Now let's start the IPR and see what our scene looks like so far. It appears that we'll need to rotate the HDRI to match the lighting better. Open the Asset Editor, and in the Lights tab, let's go into the Dome Light settings and then adjust the color or texture setting by clicking on the map icon. Under the Texture Placement menu, let's make sure that the mapping is set to spherical. Next, we'll need to adjust the horizontal rotation in order to find the lighting which best matches the original image. I happen to already know that 140 degrees matches pretty closely, so I'll go ahead and set it to that. As you can see, rotating the HDR image has changed the lighting dramatically. The next step is to project the source photograph I prepared onto the ground and wall. In the Material Editor, select the base material, and in the Diffuse Texture slot, let's add a bitmap and then load the photograph called Backplate 01. As you can now see in the IPR, the mapping is incorrect. To fix this, once again expand the Texture Placement tab. Let's change the type to Environment and set the mapping to Screen. That looks much better. Now let's go back to the Material tab. The next step is to make the ground and wall geometry invisible to the camera, so we can see the photograph in the background. We can do that by using the Material Wrapper. Click the Add Material button in the bottom left and select Wrapper to create a new wrapper material. In the wrapper material settings to the right, for the base material, let's select Base from the drop-down menu. Now make sure you've selected the wall and the ground geometry, and then let's apply the wrapper material to these two objects. Now, to make it invisible to the camera, let's first toggle on the matte option here. Now everything appears black, except for the white line at the top. If we look at the alpha channel, we will also see that it is purely white, which shouldn't be so. We need to be able to see the object's alpha, as well as the shadows that it casts, which in this case is the bike, so let's fix that. Go ahead and enable the Shadows toggle so that the shadows cast from the bike can also fall onto the wrapper. At first, there is still no change. This is because we also need to adjust the alpha contribution, so let's switch it to black alpha -1. Basically what this does is it inverts the alpha channel for the objects that have the wrapper material. In this case, that would be the ground and the wall. If we look at the alpha channel, we will see only the alpha information for the bike and the shadows remains. We also still see a white line, and that is from the dome light. We need to make it invisible. To do this, go to the Lights tab, and for the dome light settings, drop down the Options menu to turn on the invisible option. Finally, the alpha channel looks as expected, and the RGB channel looks fine as well. Now we are ready to load the photograph in the background slot. Go to the Settings menu and expand the Environment dropdown. Then click on the Background slot and select Bitmap Texture, and let's load the Backplate 01 photograph. Once more, under the Texture Placement menu, we will also need to set the type to Environment and the mapping to Screen. Now we have a background that is not affected by the lighting, which is exactly what we want. The last thing we need to do is make sure the background is not used for GI or reflections. To do that, go back to the Environment settings and let's expand the Environment Overrides dropdown. Enable the GI, Reflection, and Refraction checkboxes. Also, let's change the GI color to black. Now, the render will ignore the background photo for these settings specifically. Okay, that all looks great. Let's stop the IPR now and do a production render. After the render has completed, you can see that we have matched the lighting, that the bike's shadows are casting onto the photograph correctly, and we also have the correct alpha channel as well.